How do we prepare young people for a technological revolution? How does a curriculum in schools teach students to be adaptable for a world that we cannot predict? I don't think people realize just how hard it is for the younger generation, so 12 to maybe 17, who at the lower end entered the education system in COVID and probably had a very disrupted first couple of years in the system, and now are hearing on one hand this absolute nihilism about the future, this lack of hope, this doomer mentality that AI is coming for all of their jobs and there's not even going to be a marketplace to enter into. And then on the other hand, they're told how they must just accept and adapt to these tools because it is the future. We've all seen the boos that happened this year in the commencement speeches. So I want to present to you how I've been talking to students a little bit differently, and I want to see what you think and you see if this can scale and if it might be useful to you, even if you're transitioning into some form of AI adoption in your role. I want to share something that I think is missing that I hope you'll find useful, and I want to present these to you as drafts. I want pushback on where you think these have legs to be expanded and where there might be holes. How we can best educate young people to work in a world that is unpredictable involving the technology of artificial intelligence. And the one I want to discuss in this video is that of acceptability. And when I say acceptability, I'm going to split it into two. First, there's a personal acceptability on navigating and not being dictated to on how they use AI and what is acceptable for themselves. And then also a cultural acceptability of this technology because it is resisted in different ways in different industries. And just to start with, think about your profession. Imagine you are a student again. You're either an A+ student, a C+ average student, or a D- student. Now, for the purposes here, I'm going to say let's call C+ average. I believe that extreme AI use brings you to a very shifting average. Anyone who is below average who adopts extreme AI use, technology that never existed before that can pull them up to the mean. That is what is SLOP. And the reason I say it stays average and not above average is because it's a tool everyone uses. So those who use it very quickly at the beginning can suddenly maybe look like a B student or an A+ student, but then as it becomes widespread, it just becomes the new average. A bit like how spell checker fixed spelling for everybody. Suddenly spelling is not a marker of intelligence in the digital world. However, it doesn't seem to push them past the mean. The problem we have is that most people who exist in this top section are very dismissive for slightly the wrong reasons. And what I mean by that is that if you are ahead in any of these AI tools and you adopt them in extreme use, you actually can seem a little bit above average for a little bit of amount of time until we see the limits of these tools or everyone has access to them, and then the average suddenly just shifts up again. And then anyone who is an A+ to C+ student who is already in this top section, if they adopt AI use too much, they see it lessening their work. And this is across every single field. People who are in the top often dismiss the tool because they see how it's pulling their work down, but they also dismiss it out of a little bit of fear because they see suddenly people who are not talented getting suddenly pretty close to their ability. And they're seeing that their audience or their clients aren't able to notice the difference, even though they can. And I think it's a little bit of a misguided worry, because even if you're an A+ student, there's many reasons for you to want to increase parts of you that may be D-. For myself, I struggle a bit with admin and trying to fix certain other elements of my schedule. I would love to be average in those areas, and there may be use for AI there for me to fix. Just think how many times over the last 3 years your mind has been absolutely blown by an AI tool, only to see in about 6 months that it's pretty average, and you see it everywhere, and it's no longer special. This is happening on an almost weekly basis at the moment. And just a couple of years ago, if you were to read this little statement that I'm going to share with you now, you would think it was unbelievable it was written by a computer, and it just says, in today's rapidly evolving landscape, Oxford is not merely a university, it is a rich tapestry of knowledge. And just a couple of years ago, that would have fooled many people. But if you adopt this tool too early, like many people did in 2023, looking back now, we can read the AI tone that we were unfamiliar with at the time. And that is the problem of adopting these tools too early. Just to quickly go through the tells, I'll leave this on screen if you want to pause and read them if you're not aware of them, but I'm sure many of you are. Obviously, the M dash is there, but we're far beyond that now. The classic not X but Y, and my favorite is the kind of ultimate wrap up. But my point is then working out how to use these tools in a way that is acceptable to you, and in a way that you still have utility for if you're an A+ student, and you don't fall into the trap of being too derivative if you're a D- student. And I think what's important here is to widen this out into a design engineering principle that I learned about at university called Maya, which comes from a legendary industrial designer called Raymond Loewy. And he coined the phrase, which I've got here: the public taste is not ready to accept the logical solution to their problems if the solution is too big a departure from what they know to be normal. Now, I'll break that down because it's a little bit confusing how culturally we can accept incredibly advanced technologies in a way that is acceptable to us. The concept of Maya is most advanced yet acceptable, and the best example of it is the first ever cars. There is absolutely no need for this carriage to be this high up. There is no horse to look over. When it was lower down, people didn't like it. The only way they could understand and accept this incredibly revolutionary technology was to say, here is a carriage that no longer needs a horse. And a much better example of this that no one ever thinks of is the huge behavioral shift in 2008 when Steve Jobs released the App Store. Now, all of the students who I've been speaking to this year were born into a world where apps were normal. Yet before 2008, no one navigated their life by apps. And we don't really think of this as a technological revolution, but in human behavioral change, it is a massive thing. Your and my whole life now revolves around apps. You bank via an app, you might order your food via an app, you talk to all of your loved ones via an app, most of your entertainment might be accessed on apps, you date via apps, you get educated via apps, you check the weather on an app, you check the news on an app, everything is via apps. Before 2008, no one used them. And the implementation of the App Store is the perfect example of Maya. Just to drive this home, these three symbols we all know in 2026, but what many people don't realize is that in 2008, if you presented notes as it appears now, just like a digital type, people would not have accepted it, just like they wouldn't the combustion carriage if it didn't look like a horse-drawn one. Understanding this, the first Notes app had handwritten typography and even torn paper edges along the icon to explain to people you make what you understand to be notes on your phone now. This incredibly advanced technology made acceptable and understandable to people to transition them into it. The same with YouTube, and this one always blows people's mind. Can you think of what the original YouTube app icon was in 2008? It was a television, but it was not a television from 2008. It was a television from the 1960s or the 1950s. This is not what TVs looked like in 2008, but culturally, this is what we understood to be television. You watch what you understand to be television here now, and exactly the same with Instagram, with an old school Polaroid style camera. But this isn't just limited to tech. Everyone agrees that electric cars are the future. However, the first commercially successful electric car was the Tesla Model S in like 2012. And this is a picture of it here. And it's not that this was necessarily a better electric car than its peers. It's just that it was made in a way that was acceptable to people. All of the peers at the time had smooth front bonnets. They didn't include the grille because it was unnecessary. A grille is for a combustion engine to let the air come in to cool it, which is largely unnecessary in electric vehicles. But the smooth design, when presented in the early 2010s, no one liked. Nowadays, in 2026, they look like this and they're completely accepted, but in 2012, they were not. They pumped in engine noises to make it sound like a normal combustion engine, and also that people on the road were suddenly scared of these largely silent cars, weren't so totally freaked out. This incredibly advanced technology presented in a way that's acceptable to people. And I'll just quickly share a couple of examples of this through AI that I think are really useful. One is Meet Your DJ from Spotify, which isn't necessarily targeted at the generation who I've been speaking to largely this summer, the young people. It's much more my generation and above who remember local radio, where you would have someone who you might even call in, you could make requests, they would tell you the weather, what was happening in your area. It would gear you up in the morning, it would help you through your lunch break, it would be there on your commute home. And Meet Your DJ has been incredibly successful for Spotify because it is this incredibly advanced technology presented to people culturally in a way that they can accept. And the reason I want to talk about this is because it's a philosophy that many people don't understand when it comes to AI, in that so many companies pushed AI into customer service thinking it would work without considering this concept. And now there has been 3/4 of enterprises have rolled back AI agents in the customer service sector, and it's cost companies millions. They were efficient, they didn't hallucinate, they were quite strict. The problem is, if you're calling with a problem and it's quite serious, to hear a robot tell you, "I'm really sorry, that sounds awfully frustrating, I understand, I'll help you as soon as I can," is incredibly annoying because they don't have empathy, they are robots, and to hear them say, "I know that sounds really frustrating," was more frustrating and drove people around the bend. This falls outside of the parameter of Maya in that it's an advanced technology that is not acceptable to people, but it's also not because they are not just ready for it, it's that it falls more into that first section of what is personally acceptable. This is considered inhuman in something that must be human. And you're seeing this happen a lot in mid-2026, of things rolling back. But teaching students, I believe, about these different forms of cultural acceptability and personal acceptability are very useful because there's no moral framework on them. It's entirely giving them the autonomy to decide for themselves and to witness what they wish to accept, because they are going to have AI companies throw their products on them like mad over the next 10 years, and they have to decide individually and as a generation what is acceptable to them. If you like this video, the other two, if they're not live already, are up on my Patreon. I don't have any sponsors, so if you wish to support these kind of videos, and I'm mainly focused on creativity, but I do think like a lot of this research transcends out of it and can help a lot of other educators, and I'd be really interested if you think there's a flaw in this or how it could be adapted to other industries in a more appropriate way. I'll put the links to both videos here if they're live. If not, there'll be a Patreon link up here. See you in the next one.